Being in a gang and facing the law often goes hand in hand, and sometimes gang members show blatant disrespect towards the courtroom, the judge, and even the victims' families. These displays of disrespect often come in the form of outbursts, insults, and even physical attacks. Today, we will be counting down the top 5 most disrespectful gang members in court. It's important to note that the behavior we will be discussing in this video is not condoned or acceptable in any way. Our intention is not to glorify or promote this type of behavior, but rather to shed light on the impact it can have on the courtroom and those involved. So get ready to witness some shocking and appalling behavior as we dive into the top 5 most disrespectful gang members in court. Number 1. Darrell Brooks. Darrell Brooks, who was convicted of killing 6 people and injuring dozens more after he drove his SUV into a Christmas parade in Waukesha, Wisconsin. Brooks' reckless driving and intentional actions led to the loss of innocent lives and left a deep impact on the community. In this video, we'll take a closer look at what happened in this case. On that fateful day, Brooks drove his SUV at high speeds of over 30 miles per hour, plowing through 68 people, killing 6 and injuring dozens more. The prosecutor argued about his driving rampage being intentional, and Brooks was charged and arrested for his actions. During the trial, Brooks decided to represent himself in court, despite the judge warning him about the consequences. His behavior in court was erratic and disruptive, and he was removed from the courtroom multiple times for constant interruptions and outbursts. Brooks' real personality was on full display during the trial, as he laughed during witness testimony and threatened a witness by saying he was going to find her and kill her. He even had an outburst in court because he didn't like how the district attorney pronounced the word defendant. In one disturbing incident, Brooks had a stare down with a judge and pounded his fist, causing the judge to express fear for her safety. His behavior only added to the shock and horror of the community, who was already grappling with the aftermath of the tragedy. The jury ultimately found Brooks guilty of all 76 charges against him and sentenced him to 6 life sentences plus over 700 additional years in prison. Number 2. Bryce Rhodes. Bryce Rhodes, a man currently on trial for 3 counts of murder in Louisville, Kentucky. Rhodes' killing spree began when he shot and killed an innocent man, mistaking him for someone else. 2 teenage brothers, ages 16 and 14, were in the car at the time of the murder and became witness to the crime. A few weeks later, Rhodes killed those teenagers as well. During his trial, Rhodes exhibited erratic behavior that caused disruptions in the courtroom. He blew kisses to people, including the family of the victims, and made hand gestures and mouthed the words. He also had to wear a spit mask because he spit on his attorney. At one point, Rhodes accused the judge of having a sexual relationship with someone or being a secret member of an organization, causing for confusion and concern in the courtroom. Rhodes' trial has been extended much longer than expected due to his out-of-control behavior and the fact that he has fired several of his lawyers. As a result, it's safe to say that Rhodes will not be back on the streets anytime soon. The victims' families have been devastated by Rhodes' actions, and their lives will never be the same. It's important to remember the impact that violent crimes can have on people and their communities. Number 3. Alan McCarty. Alan McCarty, a father who lost custody of his children, made death threats to the judge who ruled against him. His erratic behavior and threats not only led to his arrest, but also a 20-year prison sentence. In this video, we'll take a closer look at what happened in this case. It all started with a phone call made by McCarty to the police department. In the call, he threatened to commit a crime if his children were not returned to him. He said, "I got a gun pointed at your building. Was your Judge Warren at you gonna bring that down in handcuffs, and I'm gonna execute us writing the street?" The phone call led to his arrest. McCarty's erratic behavior continued in court during his appearances. He was confrontational and disrespectful towards the judge. In one instance, he asked the judge if she wanted to take his children from him and then threatened her. He said, "You win it. I'm trying to think over here." His behavior led to him being moved to another room where he could watch the proceedings through a one-way glass. After being found guilty of the original threats made to the judge, McCarty was sentenced to 20 years in prison. The judge also issued an additional 10-day sentence due to his behavior in the courtroom. McCarty's outbursts and threats not only impacted his own life, but also disrupted the proceedings of the court. Number 4. Jeremy Christian. Jeremy Christian, a man who was found guilty of murdering 2 people in Portland, Oregon. It all started when Christian was on a packed train and he suddenly broke out into a racial rant towards 2 young women. Bystanders stepped in to try to stop him, but unfortunately, the situation escalated and Christian stabbed and killed 2 men, seriously wounding a third. After fleeing the crime scene, Christian was followed by passengers of the train and he eventually was arrested about a mile away. During the arrest, Christian can be seen in the back of his patrol car. Christian was later found guilty of 2 counts of murder and attempted murder. At the sentencing, one of the victims delivered a victim impact statement, and this is where Christian had an outburst. "Mr. Jeremy Christian, your mom should have swallowed you. You are a waste of breath, and when you die, you go to hell. I hope you rot. See you there, fool. Are you ready, everybody?" After Christian was escorted out of the courtroom, the judge sentenced him to 2 consecutive life terms, plus more than 25 years for his other convictions. It's unfortunate that this tragedy occurred, and it's important to remember that hate and violence have no place in our society. The actions of Jeremy Christian were not only cruel, but they also took innocent lives. We should all strive to promote love, tolerance, and understanding towards each other. Regardless of our differences, it's important to stand up against hate and to create a world where everyone feels safe and accepted. Number 5. Bass Webb. Bass Webb, a man charged with attempted murder in Lexington, Kentucky. This man has a long and disturbing history, and we will be discussing the events leading up to his conviction. In the video footage, we can see Bass Webb attempting to run over 2 employees at a jail where he recently served time. At his first court appearance, the judge is about to remove herself from the trial because she knew the 2 employees. Suddenly, Webb shocks the courtroom by spitting on the judge. The judge wipes the spit off and then kicks him out of the courtroom. However, this is not the first time that Webb was in trouble with the law. When he was behind bars, he was charged with the murder of 2 different girlfriends. He was found guilty of the killing of his first girlfriend and now is on trial for the second. During the trial, Webb showed no remorse, and the jury found him guilty. The judge sentenced him to life in prison for his crimes, but that's not the only shocking thing about Bass Webb. He showed up to court with a tattoo on his head that listed people he wanted to kill, and at the bottom was 3 rats crossed out. It's clear that this man is a danger to society. It's disturbing to think that when someone like Bass Webb was able to commit such heinous crimes and show no remorse for his actions, the fact that he had a list of people he wanted to kill on his head is alarming and shows that he is a true threat to others. Thank you for watching our video on the 5 most disrespectful gang members in court. We hope this video has shed light on the shocking behavior that has occurred during these trials. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more content.